so I'm going to talk a little bit about sex. I think it's important that I just get a feel for the audience. Okay, so now I'm ready. When I say the word passion, how many of you link that word to sex? I say passion, you think sex. Just put your hands up, let me see. So it's a couple of us, right? So for many years, I thought these two words were heavily related. And I didn't really think much about it until something happened to me where I had to really pay attention to my relationship to passion. Because there's a word, passion, or a concept, and then there's the way we relate to it. And what we're going to look at tonight is the way we relate to passion. I've discovered that passion has nothing to do with sex. In fact, how passionate somebody is has nothing to do with how they look, how old they are, what kind of degree they have, what kind of car they drive, where they live, if they're white, black, or yellow. It has nothing to do with any of those things. But I had to learn that the hard way. And I'm going to share that, some of my lessons with you here tonight. In my mid-40s, when I thought I had kind of crested the hill. Of course, I thought I was the cat's meow when I was in my 20s. But in my 40s, I thought, oh my God, I've totally hit it. I was making a lot of money. I lived in Washington, D.C. I had an apartment on a lake. Let me see. Made money, apartment on the lake. Oh, I lived around the corner from a gym. So I was a gym rat. And I had the boyfriend. So everything was looking pretty good to me. And then I got sick. So I thought, oh, shit. I go see April. So April is this big, and she's my surgeon, and she's in Washington, D.C. And I go see April, and I bring the boyfriend. And April says, after doing a couple tests with me, she says, well, good news and bad news. The good news is you don't have cancer. The bad news is you have these two choices, and you'll have to make them fairly quickly. So I thought, okay, tell me option number one. And she says, well, option number one is we can do this surgery, remove all the plumbing, and then you'll be, ripe as rain. And I wasn't really big on surgery. I mean, I was in the middle of this great life. You know what I mean? Making money, driving a nice car, going to the gym 5 days a week, the boyfriend. And I just wasn't very excited about surgery. The boyfriend's going like this, take the surgery, take the surgery. I said, well, what about option number two? She said, option number two is you don't do anything. You just wait and hope that the tumors dissolve on their own. I'm like, well, how long is that going to take? She's like, I don't know. And I thought, oh my goodness. So I opted for the surgery. And as I'm leaving the office, I look at her and I'm like, okay, April, I'm going to have this surgery. How's this going to affect my sex life? And she looks at me, real earnest. Remember, she's this big. And she looks up at me and she says, sex is 99% mental. Sex is 99% mental. I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. That has not been my experience. But I thought it was a profound and somewhat pithy statement. And so I kind of thought, I'll think about this. And I went on about my business and I had the surgery. And because I had saved a lot of money, because I was doing really well, I decided to take like 4 or 5 months off just to like kick back on the couch on my apartment over the lake with the cat and the boyfriend. And I had a great time. I watched a lot of television, watched a lot of movies, I read a lot of great books. I did not exercise, and I kept sending him out to buy me, something to eat because I was recuperating. And about 5 months passed, and I'm with the girls at Nordstrom's in Virginia. And I'm trying on my regular size, like an 8 or 10, and nothing fits. Now, it's not like I didn't know that I hadn't put on the weight. I kind of knew, but I hadn't really addressed this, in a personal way. I'm standing in the fitting room. I love these fitting rooms, where they have the 3-way mirrors. And I'm in a potato sack dress because now I'm like a large or an extra large. I'm definitely like 25 pounds in 5 months. So I'm looking at myself, and are you familiar with like an epiphany? And it's like good news, bad news about an epiphany. You're looking in the mirror and you have this moment of clarity and your whole life goes before you. And it wasn't just that I accepted that I had put on the weight. It's that I realized I wasn't really happy. And I thought, huh. And what came to me was I had lost my zest for life. I had lost my zest to go back to work. I thought about my sex life with my boyfriend. I thought, well, it's good, but my heart wasn't in it. And it's certainly been enough time since the surgery that I could have had sex. So that, I just want to put this out on the table in case you were curious. I just kind of stood there for a while and I looked at myself and I thought, this is unacceptable and I'm going to do something about this. And I had no idea what to do. But because I'm a coach and because I help people get unstuck from negative thoughts and behaviors that hamper their performance and their joy, I knew I could do this. I didn't know how to begin, but I knew I could do this. Because I've been a writer most of my life, both as an avocation and as a vocation, I thought, well, maybe I could go back to my writing. But I didn't really feel like writing. I remembered, though, that in my 20s, for my master's degree, I had written a book which was all about my sexual escapades as a college student. I'm sure nobody in the audience has done any of this, like had sexual escapades. But if you have, then you can relate to the fact that I had them and I wrote about them, and that's what I passed on for my master's degree. So I go back to this book that I wrote. I know, lucky, aren't I? I had a good professor. So, don't get me started on the stories from then, okay? But I'm trying to I go back to them, I read them, they fall flat. But I'm very determined, and I realize that one of the things that I do with people is give them practices. So I'm not going to talk a lot about coaching right now, but what is fair to understand is we give practices, things that you do on a regular basis that over time builds competence. So if you have a weak muscle as a leader, whether it's in your presentation or your body language or whatever that is, we give you practices that if you do them over time, it builds strength. We also give practices to build qualities, patience, honesty, respect. A little more challenging, a lot more fun. And we give projects. So I knew I had to give myself a practice that I could do, that I could keep up with, otherwise I would get flabby or lose patience. I go through these stories, I don't like any of them, but there's one story in particular that has always stayed with me. And I thought, let me just sit with this, because I couldn't rewrite it, because it was like, that was 20 years ago, how can I rewrite it now? But I thought, well, let me just sit with this story. And I visualized my favorite part of the story, which was the room. And I'm in this apartment, I'd never been there before, but I was in this person's apartment, and there's these curtains, white linen curtains. I'm in Brooklyn. White linen curtains, and it's an August evening, and it's balmy. It's still hot, but there's a bit of a breeze. And these curtains are flapping in the breeze. And he's got two fans, and I can hear the sound of these fans. And I'm lying on the bed under a sheet, and I can feel the breeze coming at me. And I can hear him in the shower. He's taking a shower and he's singing, of course. He's singing in the shower, and I can just visualize him soaping himself up, and then he comes out of the shower, and he comes towards me, and he's wearing this white towel, and he's a beautiful man. And his hair is wet, and he's got beads of water on his skin, and he lays down next to me, and I can smell the soap. And I realize as I'm recounting this and actually recreating and making this up, I start to feel like all my senses are coming alive again. My sense of sight, my sense of hearing, my sense of tasting, my sense of touch, my sense of thinking, all my faculties are activated. And in that moment, I reconnected with my passion. It was like the pilot light went back on. And I spent the next couple of years writing erotica. The funny thing is, and I want to say this up front, the path I took to find my passion was one that worked for me. I had to find my own, as Peggotty talked about, my wise judge and listen. And so I found my teacher, my personal guru, and followed that wisdom, and it worked out really well because I took on a practice for a couple of years. It actually helped me craft my writing, because when you write erotica, it isn't so much about the sex, it's really, can you get all the details and slow it down enough so that people can get into the scene with you. And that's what I did. And out of doing that, my clients started to change, because they were like, well, what are you doing? And I said, well, I'm doing this kind of writing. They're like, oh my. And they had this interest in cultivating their own intimacy in their relationships. And so I started teaching erotica writing courses in DC. So you don't know when you start a practice where it's going to take you. And what we do as coaches is we work with people, and we may give you a practice, and what we hope for is that you can stay with it to see, trust the method to see the results of it. So I don't write erotica anymore, although it was a hell of a practice for me. But that's not the point. The point is, what it allowed me to do was stop blaming everybody else for the condition in which I found myself, which is a very common habit that we all have. When things don't go well, when we're not very happy, when we don't like what's going on for us, the first thing we do is start blaming ourselves or other people for the state. I did blame April for selling me on a surgery. I did blame the boyfriend for not talking me out of the surgery. I did blame my friends for not talking me out of the surgery. I blame my body for not, supporting me after the surgery. I threw my parents in there because what the hell? This is just what we do. So one of the things to be aware of is that passion can be rekindled at any time. Life is always changing. Relationships are changing. Our body's changing. Our interests change. I mean, this is the deal. And so one of the things I'd like to impart here is that you are in control of your own passion. It has nothing to do with sex, and it can be brought into sex, of course. I'm not going to stand here and say it doesn't. But the boyfriend was not responsible for my passion. I was responsible for my passion. And as April so wisely said, sex is 99% mental. And it took me those couple of years of exploration to really come back to home with that statement. So I just want to read you this quote. This is from Thich Nhat Hanh, who's been one of my teachers. Love is the capacity to take care, to protect, to nourish. If you're not capable of generating that kind of energy towards yourself, if you're not capable of taking care of yourself, of nourishing yourself, of protecting yourself, it's very difficult to take care of another person. Love is a practice. Love is truly a practice.